Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Sharon D. Johnson. Thank you for coming to this panel, Change Agents, Black and Native American Women on Art and Activism. I am pleased to have this fabulous panelists to join us, Cheryl. We have Tanis, an actor-producer who does seminal work on trafficking. Shonda Buchanan, an award-winning author and educator, author of the critically acclaimed book, Black Indian. And Ahsaki Chachere, who is the founder and CEO of Ah-Shi Beauty. We are waiting for one more panelist. We have two interpreters here from Pro Bono ASL, so we are very thankful for that. So you should see the highlighted interpreter on your screen. And to begin, I would like to have Sophia Giza, author of Mound Builders of Ancient America. See if you can see that. She is going to open us with a greeting/lesson. So Sophia, please, thank you, begin.
And thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure. I burn this sacred sage as I walk with the Creator, as I talk with the Creator, as I listen to the Great Spirit. May it cleanse this space and protect my home. I honor the circle of life, the four directions, as above, so below. May this bring healing, strength, and peace to us. In the beginning in the east, there's birth each day. To the south, with warm and light, there's growth. Closing of the day in the west, there's maturity. To the north lies wisdom and guidance. We burn this sage to give us strength, to give us peace in these times, to bless and open the way. I will end by opening the heart chakra. It's been said by the elders that the women will lead the way toward healing. So let this be a step in that direction. Aho, Hetepu, Ah-Shi, Mitaki, Oyasin, to all my relations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. So I just want to start with a little round robin. What was into the work, the creative and advocacy work that you currently do? And is there an ancestor or elder that has influenced you? Anybody can start. Just make sure you unmute yourself.
Greetings. My name is Shonda Buchanan, as you can see from the screen. And the advocacy work that I do is through literature. I consider myself a literary activist, and also I'm an educator. And I talk about the intersections of African Americans and American Indians in this country, and then also internationally as well, because I see the same kinds of experiences, worldwide when I travel. Particularly my heritage is Eastern Band Cherokee, Chachere, Choctaw on my dad's side, and the first two on my mom's side. I trace my lineage and ancestry on the American Indian side to North Carolina, Virginia. And in terms of the ancestors who I you know, take my journey from, I would say, all of my ancestors actually, but particularly my great grandfather, you know, Jason Stafford, and also my grandfather Clifford Stafford, and then, you know, grandmothers, you know, Frances Caldonia Manuel, and my eldest predecessor, we're talking about the women, is Annie S. Millam, who was married when she was 12 years old to one of my grandfathers, and proceeded to have 15 kids for for her husband. So those are the ancestors that I call on.
Thank you, thank you. Just a reminder: if all the non-speakers, panelists can turn, if all the guests, I'm sorry, who are not panelists, can turn your mic and your camera off.
I'll go next because I named an entire, you know, organization after my mother. So.
Okay, Cheryl. Cheryl, before you begin, I just want to let everyone know our fifth panelist, Jolie Proudfit, is here. And Jolie will have you introduce yourself and give us a rundown after Cheryl. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Cheryl L. Bedford, line producer by trade, activist by birth. So after my mother died, that's when I started Women of Color Unite. And before we became Women of Color Unite, we were a Google Doc of women of color in entertainment. That very first event that I think you attended, Sharon, February of 2018 at the actor Kelly Perrine's house. I just got sick and tired of people saying I don't know any ... And so I got together all the women of color that I knew. I originally invited 50, that became 75, 150 showed up. And we created a Google Doc. And I named it after my mother, the JTC list, and it stands for Joan Teresa Curtis. When we became a nonprofit, I didn't want to name it because I'm like, nobody will know what the JTC list means. So that very first invite that I sent out, that for February 2018 event, said, Women of Color, ... unite. And a moment has now become a movement. So I would absolutely say my mother, and then I would say her father, because when I curse, Tom Curtis comes out. So, you know, when I'm sitting up in rooms and stuff and I'm calling people motherfucker, yes, I curse all the time. That is all my grandfather. So, you know, the two of them.
Love it, love it. Jolie, if you can jump in and introduce yourself. And the question is, what was the inciting incident, if you will, that propelled you into your advocacy and artistic work? And who was the ancestor or elder who has influenced you?
Can you hear me? Okay, all right. Miriam. Natong, Dr. Jolie Proudfit, good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Sharon, for your invitation to be on this panel with all these beautiful, fantastic, powerful women. I appreciate the opportunity, and my apologies for being late. As we know, the Zoom and the Wi-Fi and all of that is 2020. What can I say, right?
That's right. That's right.
My husband's hotspot. I'm zooming in from my home in Carlsbad, California, which is the traditional homelands of the Payomkowishum Luiseno people. I am Payomkowishum, so I have the good fortune to live and work on my homelands. And so I just, you know, it's always important for me to center myself in my land and in my space. And I am a scholar, activist, producer, storyteller. And I think all of us probably come from a strong line of storytellers. And my story and my power and my voice began when I was a young child with my mom, and, you know, looking to her and realizing she was someone who had very limited voice with the 10th grade education, and watching people make and shape a narrative about her and assume things about her. And so I knew that I wanted to use my education and my platform to elevate Native peoples, especially those that have been the most marginalized. And I guess my mentor, who really inspired me professionally to find my voice and to kind of address myself and be an academic activist and a change maker is Vine Deloria Jr., who was my mentor and like a father to me. But he, if you've never heard of him or read his work, I would encourage you all to take the time to read Custer Died for Your Sins. The book is 52 years old. It's called Custer Died for Your Sins, an Indian Manifesto. And it's so valuable even today. Just read the preface and the opening chapter. And unfortunately, it holds true to how stereotypes are created about Native peoples, how power or disempowerment. And so under his advice and guidance, I have created a career where I can at least help elevate and change those negatives into positives and elevate Native peoples and our voices so that we have our own narrative sovereignty and we are our own storytellers.
Excellent, excellent. That's real important. We're going to deep dive into that in a minute. Ahsaki.
Hello, everyone. Ya'at I am Ahsaki Sashri, the founder CEO of Ah-Shi Beauty, the first Native American Black-owned beauty brand and the first to open a storefront in the country. So I'm super, super excited. I am Dine and I'm Black. I grew up in the Navajo Nation. I can read, speak, write. I grew up very traditionally. My background, being a dark-skinned Native, especially on my reservation, being the largest in the country, was tough. So what really inspired me was, you know, my own story and others who are like me, that's Native and Black, and how we don't have no representation, period, in any part of in the industry itself. It's very limited. The struggle of, you know, being dark-skinned Native and how just our appearance alone, it's a struggle, period. And it's so hard. And beauty itself, you know, it goes deeper than just the appearance. And it's, you know, really connecting with the youth more than anything. The future is my inspiration. Where I grew up is in Bedford, Arizona. It's the very land that my ancestors grew up, like, lived. So I'm very rooted to where my ancestors are from, my bloodline. And little backstory, my great grandfather, he had a trading post. So I guess that's where my entrepreneur spirit, business mindset came in from. The very trading post is still in the canyon. And I guess that little trait trickled down to me, and that's now I'm opening stores. And so it all goes back to who we are as Indigenous people. We have always been traders. We've always been, you know, 4 steps ahead of the world, connecting with people all around the world. And now it's just, you know, shaping and controlling the narrative, and just the representation matters, but authentic representation matters the most. So yeah, my family, my tribe, my culture, everything, being Native and Black, being unapologetic about it is my platform and what I stand for.
Oh, yes.
Oh, no, yeah, I can unmute myself. Tante, everybody. Tanis Parenteau, Nisigason, Naya Apitawe Gosisin, Zayitawak Nisosin. Hello, everyone. My name is Tanis Parenteau. I'm a member of the Métis Nation of Alberta from Region 6 in Peace River, where I currently am right now. Quarantining in Canada for a couple weeks before the holidays because I just got here. And I have a new rescue dog, and he's running around, so I'm sort of trying to keep an eye on him. So I apologize if I keep doing this. It's because it's almost supper time and he's getting antsy. I'm an actor and producer, and I work for the American Indian Community House in New York City, where I normally am on the Lenape Island of Manhattan in Hell's Kitchen. And I'm the events and media manager with them, and I run the Fit Native program and their Native roster. But really, acting is my heart. Producing was a vehicle to act in, and which is how I got into producing. But I would say the sort of inspiration inciting incident with that was working with Spider Woman Theater with Muriel Miguel, Gloria Miguel, and Liz, their sister. And, well, they're all sisters, the 3 sisters. And I was working with them on a piece called Material Witness many years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago. And the way that they, their processes in the rehearsal room is, we have a specific, on that specific piece, we were doing women in violence was the topic, essentially. And everyone had to get up and tell a story about violence, something that happened to them or something that they knew, a story that they heard. And it dawned on me that I had a story that I didn't realize I had a story that fell into that category. And I got up and I told it. And then being an actor, sometimes you get really tired of waiting by the phone. And sometimes you get, you know, you want to make your own content just to work, just to do something. And so that kind of fell together in a way. I thought, well, I have this little story I told in rehearsal. I can write it down into screenplay format and shoot it, make a little short film. And that's kind of how the producing bug bit me. And it happened to be about a Native issue. And from there, scripts just kind of fell into my lap with one writer that tracked me down from Peters First Nation, which is just outside of Vancouver. And I just loved his scripts. I got really excited about them. I really connected with them. And it was just a great way to continue to be a voice for these issues that I felt so passionate about. And so kept just working with him and producing little shorts here and there. So yeah, Spider Women Peter are definitely a huge inspiration for me. Really, when it comes to the ancestors, there's so many, specifically in my family. I would say a couple of my great uncles that have passed, my Uncle Leo and my Uncle Tommy, and my great-great-grandma, Marie Rose Cardinal, who took script instead of signing Treaty 6. And that's kind of where my family like veered off into one direction from the treaty signing. And really, like, as an actor, I feel like I'm lucky to be able to say words and tell stories that playwrights and writers have written about stories that they know or experiences that their families have had or that they've just chosen to write about. And to be a vehicle to deliver those words, I feel like I get inspired by just being able to tell those stories. So it's a lot of ancestors that I'm usually with in my work.
Given all of you all's beginnings, what has been, I think, the most maybe challenging aspect of doing what you do, or adding to what you do, or pivoting, and how did you confront that, and what is your most favorable experience? And yeah, anybody can jump in. Yes, Ahsaki.
Okay, so again, like growing up on the Navajo Nation, colorism was what I faced head on. And unfortunately, you know, I'm not the only one that has happened. This happens to, it's all of us, you know, from all nations. And that's what really pushed me to really build this beauty brand, is because the world has this look of what a Native person looks like. And unfortunately, I don't fit that look. And many of us don't fit that look. So it's just, again, you know, taking away that stereotype and showing the world that we as Indigenous people, as Native people, we are very diverse. And that the world needs to understand that and respect that real quick, because, you know, all across Turtle Nation, you know, us as Indigenous people, Native Black people, you know, we're at the bottom of the totem pole sometimes. We're like, no one really takes us serious. So fighting that colorism and, you know, standing on it and showing the world that who we are and that we are also part of this Native world, the community, and, you know, and we're not backing down, and just creating that space and safe space for us. And, you know, just to continue to educate people. What I've learned thus far and what I'm very proud of is that the brand has been getting so much media, and my story has been shared, not just in Harper Bazaar, but Good Morning America and Yahoo Live. So the narrative that I am, you know, controlling is now showing light that we as Indigenous people come in very beautiful different shades of browns, and, not just browns, all different shades of colors, and that we are the same people. So yeah, that's really helped me.
So for me, I wrote a book about it. The colorism was definitely an issue that I grew up with, particularly with my mom's side of the family, because they were very didn't want to associate with the darker skinned Indians. You know, my auntie actually wouldn't even comb my hair because I had two, like my kitchen was like, it was like not like her kitchen. And but she knew, she was the one, this great aunt Catherine was the one who kept the family like tree and lineage, and she wrote the names and the ethnicities and the heritage and, you know, dates of the people. She was the first one to keep that family tree, and I inherited that from my great aunt, from my aunt Irma. And so now I'm kind of the keeper of the stories, and I've done even more research around that. But colorism was such a huge issue because a lot of the lighter, bright skinned folks, you know, would denigrate, you know, the darker skinned Indians. I mean, just, you know, terribly. And I talk about that as well. But another issue that I confronted was identity. And then I will say identity with regards to trying to figure out how I could honor both sides of my heritage without denying the other. And a lot of times I would get the question, what are you? What are you? And you know, that if that question is thrown at you as a child constantly because you don't fit into the box in terms of your hair, they used to call my hair that good Indian hair. And in terms of like my features, I had one of my friends, a dark-skinned friend, tell me, you know, you're not really Black. I'm like, what? You know? So a lot of that has been trying to reconcile that, you know, being proud of being African American and then being proud of that Indian heritage, but then most proud of being mixed blood, and then not allowing anyone to take either one of them from you, like two sides of a coin. And also it's interesting because Ahsaki, you said about authentic stories, right? And I didn't grow up on a reservation. I grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I grew up with the oral narrative of being Black, white, Indian. None of my family, my mom didn't trace anything. No one had any of our records because we were that tribe, the group, the family group, I say, who essentially, when they started tightening restrictions on free people of color in North Carolina and Virginia, so we were the ones who said we're going to sell our land and we're going to leave before the Trail of Tears happens. You know, before they, like, the climate was, you know, just the climate for free people of color, for mixed bloods, was treacherous back then. And so my folks on several branches of my family got on that Kings Highway Trail, the Appalachian Trail, went to Tennessee, Kentucky, finally Indiana, where they settled some of the first free people of color settlements in Indiana. And then those Roberts and Staffords and Manuels there went to Michigan, which is where I was born. And they also started some of the first free people of color settlements there as well. So just tracing that history and that ancestry has given me such a strong sense of identity, and also a sense of authenticity, like the ability to step into a ceremony and to say, okay, I am representing all my relations. I am representing everyone who I come from, as the Lakota say, Matakwiyase, right? So I'm happy and I'm proud that I can actually say who my nations are, from oral history and also from the research that I have done.
So we'll get back to this, but it just reminds me of Langston Hughes, who I've done a lot of work on, who was Black and Native and writes about it in his autobiography, but his life, he had to choose which one is he going to focus on. And he basically forfeited his Native identity to be Black and to take part in a movement in the 1920s that was about Black people. And, you know, what that did to him, as far as my work goes on him, was very interesting. So we're going to get back to that.
Can I
identity and representation in a second. Cheryl, yeah.
Can I
Yeah,
add something?
Yeah.
So
No. Go ahead, Shonda. Finish your sentence.
Oh,
Finish your thought.
well, because what you said was that Langston Hughes was forced to choose, and essentially colorism or the Racial Integrity Act was another thing that made mixed bloods have to choose, and then some people would ostracize us as well. So I want to say here, recorded, that white supremacy is at the root of a lot of African Americans being unable to claim that American Indian heritage, and that the racial divide, the divide was constructed within our families, particularly when they went into the Indian schools and they said, if you have any Blacks or any Black relatives in these schools, you will not get any federal funding. And so there was a bit of that pulling, going through those families and pulling the darker skinned cousins out of the school. And even the Chachere tribe, one of my nations, has in the founding of their schools, there is no Negro blood nor Black blood, nor has there ever been any. So a lot of that divide, that African Americans have had to live by was constructed because of white supremacy. So I apologize, Cheryl. I just had to say, I had to drop that in there.
No, it's all state sanctioned, right? The genocide,
exactly.
And that's part of the reason I wanted to bring everyone together, because we do have a role to play in changing that trajectory. So anybody else want to jump in next about what has been your greatest challenge in the work you do, and what has been the great reward? Yep.
A couple of things. My biggest challenge, I'm just going to say it, white people. White people. I know everybody starts laughing. Sharon has known me for a long time, so I have to pull no punches, child. Also, I'm one of the producers of Dark Girls, for those who don't know. So when you're talking about colorism, let's face it, it's all rooted in anti-Blackness, right? All of it. And I don't care whether you're Indigenous or Asian or Latinx or whatever it is. Everybody who comes to this country understands that the closer you can identify to whiteness, the closer you are to whiteness, the more benefit there is from it. And that's really what it's about. It is all white supremacy. It is all about anti-Blackness, right? Like, I'm just blackity black, but I got this hair. And so growing up, people are like, what kind of Indian are you? I'm like, I'm Black. What are you mixed with? More Black. There is, I'm Black and Black. Like, okay. I mean, is there Native American? Here's the interesting thing. Didn't somebody recently, when they were doing those DNA studies, oh God, why am I drawing a blank? Anyway, when they were doing them, that there are more Black Americans who think that they actually have Indian DNA than actually do.
Right.
And there has
has
right. It was
highlighted
exactly. Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not that. It's we've been raped by, white slaveholders.
Right. And so there's this idea that somehow being Indian is actually, for us, as descendants of slaves, and let's face it, descendants of the rape of our foremothers, that it would be better, right? So we have this all in our head, hence why all you have to do is have, something other than 4C hair, and all of a sudden they're like, you're Indian. And I'm like, no, I'm Black mixed with Black. And so it's really just about everything that we're talking about really stems in anti-Blackness. And though whether Indigenous people thought this, centuries ago or not, they've internalized it, right? Like everything has been set up in this country to align yourself with whiteness. And so, that's sort of the thing. And when you're like, what's your biggest thing? Like white people. I mean, and what I mean by that is that it's systematic. It is systemic, right? I mean, it's like taking all of our statistics that we do regarding women of color in entertainment. I've told this story a million times, which is before the rebellion, we packaged it up nice and neat. It was based on 600 women of color because I got tired of saying women, people of color. I'm like, yeah, there's something wrong with this. So as Sharon knows, to belong to Women of Color Unite, we don't charge you anything. You do have to fill out forms. Those forms give us the largest study. And so we once a year put the statistics together. And so we packaged it up all nice and pretty. And I took it around to Netflix and Apple. All these people were like, now Black Lives Matter. Yeah, a year ago, they didn't. A year ago, Black lives didn't matter. Indigenous lives didn't matter. Latinx, especially when it came to women. No, they didn't. Right? And I don't care whether I'm sitting up in the C-suite at Netflix or Disney or whomever. None of these people gave a good goddamn. Then came a pandemic mixed with a rebellion. And they're like, oh, because here is the bottom line. White trumps green. In the state of California, when a company is run by a woman of color, profits go up by as much as 30%. But here's the thing, profits always go up. Well, wouldn't that tell you that every company in the state of California really should be run by a woman of color? If profits, if it really depends on green. It'll depend on green. White trumps green. Don't let anybody tell you any different, right? So one of the things of having a mother who was an activist is that my mama told me, because she was marching with me on her hip, okay? And one of the things that my mom told me was that she said, you don't know what's going in the head of white people. Like, you don't know what's going on in their head. You just don't know. She said, but this is what you can do. You can put feelings into statistics, because she was an activist, but her day job was a statistician. And so she's like, you could put this into statistics and you just give it to them. Now they can still do what they want to do, but then they know, here's the bottom line. They know, right? They can go off and be racist and sexist and ableist and ageist and colorist and homophobic and all of that. Here's what they know. They now know And there's power in that. And that's where I come from. In everything that we do with Women of Color Unite, in all of my activism, I always talk statistics. I don't care what's in your heart and your goddamn mind. I don't know what your mama did to you. I don't know what your daddy did to you. I don't know that. It is not my job as a Black person to figure out what somebody did to you and worry about your motherfucking tears. Here's the thing. Here are the stats. What you gonna do about it? End of story.
So Tanis, that makes me think of all the roles that you've played. We had a chance to chat a couple of weeks ago. And not that they're all the roles you've portrayed, but some of the more high profile roles that you've played on, major either cable or streaming services, they are specifically Native American characters. So is that the area, before I force you to talk about that, is that the area you found the greatest challenge in, or is it your activism talking about women and violence and things?
Yeah.
What has been your experience either telling the fictitious story through your acting or telling actual stories through your advocacy? Where's the greatest challenge been there, and where's the greatest reward for you?
Sure. Yeah, I was actually just going to go there. The greatest challenge being an actor who happens to be Native is that I'm stamped as a Native actor, and that has pros and cons. I feel like one of the biggest challenges is anytime I'm cast in something, especially something like the shows that I've been on, the high profile shows, that if there's something that I find in the script that I feel is not authentic, or, something we would never say, be like, this is not right. Do I take on that task of that emotional labor of speaking up? I've had to do it in the audition room, and only just sheerly because I read the script and I got the part, which is great, but in the audition room, I had to I couldn't leave after I auditioned without telling the casting director that, I don't know if you guys have a consultant or a native writer in the room, but just so you know, like this, we wouldn't say this, we wouldn't say that. And I don't know if that's going to lose me the part or get me the part, but like, I just like personally, my being, I couldn't leave that room without speaking up about it. And I find it happens a lot, especially because there are barely any native writers. And I mean, it's happening more now, which is great, but a lot of times native roles have been written, you know, as just a little token piece in there, and there's no real thought and depth to them. And so, yeah, you have to just make that decision personally, if I want to like take that on, because it's a lot, and most of the time I do, which is why a lot of times in real life, like in daily conversations, I put that aside because I save it for those moments, because it's a struggle constantly, I feel like, especially, you know, with the connection of the internet these days. So yeah, there's that. Sometimes you, and then also like when I get to play these great roles, then I get asked, as an actor, you know, you do get asked, like, what do you think your character would wear? But then it's because you're native, it's specifically, okay, well, do you know any, so there's a silver lining to it too, because it's like, do you know any native designers who you think would be great? And it's like, I do. And now I have to go and like look them all up and find all their websites and send them to you, because it's great that you're asking, and then now they can get work too, but like that shouldn't be my job. I know, and now I'm a consultant, right? Yeah. So, but it's a constant struggle with making those decisions to do that or not. And another struggle I would say is not looking like the stereotype. And so I get opportunities because I'm native, which is great, because a lot of casting directors these days are really getting educated about what it means to be native, and it's not just dark skin and long dark hair. And because like clearly that's not me anymore. I cut my hair a long time ago. But because I am known as a native actor, I get these opportunities to audition. However, casting directors don't always make the casting decisions. You know, they pass on who they think was good for the role. And then the higher ups, the producers, the showrunners, they get all the final yeses. And so sometimes if you don't look native enough, and if you don't look like what they had in your head, you're not going to get the role. So not that I know that's ever specifically happened to me, but I definitely have, heard that, well, you don't look native. So, but the most rewarding, I would say, is that like Shonda, you talked about identity, a strong sense of identity. And I feel like that's what happened with me, and being able to get into my work that way with working with Native artists like Spider-Woman Theater specifically. I got to really reconnect and reclaim a lot of my culture that way through the arts.
That's great. Well, we have someone here who does do consulting. Jolie, can you give us some good pointers about how to navigate that road?
Yeah, well, these are, gosh, I mean, I could talk with you all for hours and hours, because there's so many things I want to talk about. I want to talk about, anti-Blackness and anti-racism and anti-colonialism. The two have to go together. We have to talk about them together. And I think right now we have to keep that conversation alive, because that's where our power is. And so I want to, center us back to that conversation, because this is where we're going to lock arms and find that solidarity for some real change. And I think the powers that be and those white forces are very afraid of this, solidarity happening and moving forward, of finally addressing the, anti-Black, anti-racist, anti-colonialism. And, we're kind of in an interesting time. The consultant business, well, one of the reasons why I got into consulting is I was so tired of the misrepresentation of Natives, but I was also exhausted to hear how often Hollywood reached out and was taken down the wrong path. And so, sometimes we have those folks, and we all know who they are, and they know everything about everything. And they will say yes, yes, yes to cash a check. and will steer something down a wrong road. And, you know, this voice of authenticity, there's no one way to be Native. We're very diverse, and that is what makes us cool. But this role of the consultant, I think, has been something that has been so extended, and it's been a term that's been so abused, that I think we really need to redefine it. And in my experience, you know, producing is more what I do, and I hire technical consultants. And I think what the industry has done for so long is to hire folks under this consultant umbrella who really serve as producers. There would be no story, there would be no content if they didn't have, you know, the Native content background, and they don't want to give that power. So hearing Tanis talk about like having to, you know, talk about this, that, or the other, wouldn't it be wonderful if she could be on set focusing on her lines and her performance and her acting, and she could go to that Native producer and say, hey, right, I need you to do this? Or it's just, we need to have more than one of us on that team. And so I'm a big advocate of building a team above the line. I think what the Indigenous Screen Office has been doing in Canada has been amazing. And I realize Canada is so far different than what we have in the US, because, you know, we have more people in the state of California than the entire country of Canada. So just our population and our, you know, our ratio has been challenging, but there are lots of things that we can learn from. And I just wish that we would all stand in solidarity, so that when we say no to a project for very good reasons, that we should all hold the line. But there's always that person that's going to say yes and allow a piece of crap to be made, or, you know, they get an Indian to sign off on that. And so I think moving away from this notion of piecemeal consulting and moving into above the line folks, especially and producers that make real decisions, right? To make sure that the story is crafted and shaped in a way that does honor and creates art. I mean, and again, you know, we're our own worst enemies. I think often Hollywood is very hesitant to work with Natives because of the criticisms, because of like, we can't do anything right. You know, we're the first ones to say, well, that person is playing that tribe and they're not from that tribe. It's acting. You know, I remember being with Wes Studi at, we were doing a press junket event, and he's an amazing, phenomenal actor who has spoken a zillion tribal languages, and he's a fluent speaker of his own tribal language. But I remember a young Native woman just recently, a couple of years ago, asked him a question, and she says, do you ever feel bad for taking the roles and playing other tribes when that is not your tribe? And I had the mic and I just kind of passed it to him, and I was just like, I'm going to just let him go to town on that, right? Because on the one hand, our Native people should be allowed to play any character and we should be supporting them. But the issue is this voice of authenticity. I think hearing the conversation earlier about identity, what white power and settler colonialism has done to our identity is a number. I mean, just the fact that I hear this term Black Indians, but we don't hear white Indians, right? You could have somebody who's 1/300 something percentage, fill in the blank tribe, and they don't go around saying they're white Indian. But it's so interesting. So that right there, that's some racializing white power stuff that has been indoctrinated. And, you know, that internal colonization is persistent. And so we have to address that. We really have to address that. And as a California Indian, you know, we have been so disempowered for so long. And it's only been about 25 years that we have kind of found our way. And it's because of tribal government gaming. You know, I'm old enough to remember outhouses. I'm old enough to remember extreme poverty in our tribal communities. And now we're the major sponsor of the LA Rams and the Lakers. Like, what? How did that even happen? Like, that is so far. But I remember people saying, what tribe are you? And I'd be like, I'm Pechanga from the Nyesakot clan. And other Indians would make fun of it. Like, what? Is that a real tribe, or is that a part of Mexico? You know, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. So the internal racism right? It's like crazy rampant, but we have to remember where that stems from. And this hyphenization, you know, are you a res Indian? Are you an urban Indian? Are you a casino Indian? Are you a DC Indian? Are you a conference Indian? It is crazy. So whatever happened to identifying ourselves by our ancestors and who we are, right? And the people that we come from and the stories that shaped us. I'm the 5th generation descendant of Pablo Apis, who received a Mexican land grant after the Spanish missionaries left from San Luis Rey. And the Treaty of Temecula was signed in his kitchen, in his house in Temecula. And that Treaty of Temecula was never ratified by the federal government. And so you have a lot of tribal peoples today that aren't even recognized. You had three guys sent by the federal government to come to California to sign up all the tribes and the Indians. California is the 6th largest economy in the world, right? So there are places that they never got to. There are pockets of the state where there's no tribal federal recognition. And these people exist today and are even deemed native. And so now we have the governor finally talking about a truth and reconciliation. I think reconciliation is a bizarre term because that means there's reconciliation happening.
Right.
It didn't work out in Canada. But I'm like, okay, why don't we deal with the trauma by addressing how we can support and help Native people today? And let's start by recognizing, right? Let's start by recognizing Native people. This identity politics, that's some internal colonization on steroids that we all have to address, because I think people realize the minute we move that to the side, park that, the power that we are going to have in moving forward in not only our narrative, in our power, and our humanity, and our sisterhood. You talk about missing and murdered Indigenous women, the violence that's happening internally in our own community. A lot of this stems from that settler colonialism that is strong. The force is strong with that one, and we got to get rid of it.
Yeah, it 2 days ago, I believe, the 11th, Sharice Davids and Deb Holland did a video interview with the Washington Post talking about this whole idea of identity and representation. And so it's, again, we all have this struggle, whether it's internalized or, you know, whether we're becoming aware of it, I don't know. But so there's this paradox that, yes, you know, Sharice and Deb, but they were talking about being the first. But as Kamala Harris's mother told her, yeah, you might be the first, but make sure you're not the last. So how do we get past this? Yes, representation is important, but it can't only be about representation. See, there's the woman. See, there's the first so-and-so. See, there's the first so-and-so. How do we really move past that to get to the place where we are more free and more grounded in claiming all parts of our identity, so that we're not erasing or, you know, kind of folding up one in favor of the other because of someone else's political machinations.
Balancing our traditional and modern day world at the same time. That's the only way that we can do this. Again, growing up on the reservation, I grew up in a traditional hogan. Dirt floor, no running water, no electricity. To this very day, we still have our livestock, we still have our fields, we still live off of Mother Earth. And growing up very traditionally is, at first, I say this all the time, I thought my parents were crazy because, like, Mom, our house is being built. What are we doing? But it was a really good teaching for us to understand that you do not take turning on a light switch for granted. You don't take turning on a faucet for granted. You're going to learn how to chop wood. You're going to learn how to cook off of an open fire. You're going to learn how to butcher a sheep. You're going to learn how to, you know, survive. And I was about like 8, 9 years old. So this is how my mom grew up. And my grandparents grew up, and so on and so forth. And my poor future babies, this is how they're gonna grow up too. They don't know it yet. But but it's how we balance that, you know. Every day is changing. The world is changing as we see it come, as it's forming. But what will never change is our culture, you know, and that's our strength. You know, our language, our prayers, our ancestors, we're here because of them. And like Jolie was saying, you know, as we come together, that's the biggest force that they do not want to reckon with. But we understand that we are stronger together than anything. As we all, as Indigenous people, I say Indigenous people, not just Native American, Indigenous people from all around the world, from Asia to Africa to Australia, everywhere, you name it. When we all come together, oh, it's over. And that's the power that our ancestors had way before all this craziness, before blood quantum, before colorism, before all this chaos. So we have the power now, which is, yeah, it's scaring them. But it is our generation this is our time to set up for the future generations so that we hold on to that power. And our power is our culture. And no one can take that away. It doesn't matter if you are a fourth, a half, a 16th. It doesn't matter. If you have that native blood, that's who you are, you know? So just hanging on tight to that and respecting it, and also always researching, you know. Not everyone is able to live on the reservation or had that experience, but I always understand that, you know, it's okay as long as that person is trying to learn. We need to give that person that chance to learn, to reconnect. And it's like, who are these pro-native people? Like, who are they to say that this person can't because they're half or a fourth or a third? You know, we need to take that away and just find a way to connect. And once we all connect to the centers, our hojon, we say in Navajo, hojon is our inner peace. When we're solid, we're at one. When we all find that, we're good. So just balancing traditional world in the modern world, I think we got it.
I really love that. I really love that. I also want to say, for me as a writer, it's the reclamation of memory, right? It's reclaiming the memory, the power of memory, and then also being able to tell our ancestors' stories, and then also being able to tell our family stories at the same time. And for me, writing Black Indian was really a book about, why is my family so crazy? Like, why are we fighting and yelling, and, you know, why did I grow up in this violent home? And so as a child, you know, it's basically about protecting yourself. And then as a young adult, it's like, there are some systemic issues. Okay, I know I'm in school. I know what systemic means now. And then as a young, probably about my 20 to 26, I really started feeling that the ancestral, the trauma of, this is what happened to your enslaved ancestors. This is what happened to your ancestors who were not on the trail, but who in some way, shape, or form experienced something connected to 5 civilized tribes, or, you know, 5 civilized tribes. Either they were not on the trail with the Cree, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Seminole. You know, either they were a part of that journey, or they like escaped that journey. There was all this like traumatic moments in history for me to write about, and it just became this moment of, I remember when I was in the middle of this book, and I had a moment of, both of my ancestors were on the Holocaust, right? The African Holocaust from the Middle Passage, and then the erasure of American Indians in this country, or the attempt, let's say that, the attempt of erasure. And so that moment, it felt like, so now it is your job as the writer to tell the story as best you know how, right? And another thing that I learned on the trail is, if I have offended anybody, please forgive me. This is what I have learned, and this is the way that I learned it. And particularly, this is the way that I lived it. So I think the power of memory and the act, because memory is an act, right? And the act of reclaiming that memory is a thing that can empower us so that we can empower the next generations as well.
Well, we're speaking about identity and claiming it all. I just wanted to highlight this shirt that sort of does that. So this spring and summer, a company called Lotus and Lane, I don't know if you can see that, made leather jewelry, leather bracelets, and t-shirts supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. And so that reminded me of what you were saying about this, people are scared when we begin to not pay attention to this narrative of separation or being pitted against each other. And when we begin to support each other in whatever that means, and listening to each other and, okay, what do you need right now? And so, yeah, that's why I wore this in that spirit. I don't have a business, but Ahsaki, you could attest to this, I'm sure. It's not cheap to make merchandise and to make, and so for someone to use their craft to say publicly, we're not doing this crap anymore. We are coming together. We are recognizing that one person's or one group's oppression is no different than our own oppression. And so there's no competition about who's going to get, the white savior / daddy, mommy's, benefits, right? It's like, no, you have put your knee on everybody's neck, and we're not going to allow that narrative to cause us to not see our brother or sister's pain. And so I just thought, that's why I bought myself a t-shirt. I bought my nephew one of the bracelets for his birthday. And so this kind of goes to the, so what, these performative gestures. So what is a t-shirt going to do? Or so what is, I think Jolie, you posted an article, the New York Daily News, someone wrote an article about how acknowledging land sovereignty is pointless.
Yeah.
Can
I talk to that for a minute?
I don't think it's pointless. I think there is power in these gestures, but yes, please go ahead.
So many of the land acknowledgements have become really performative and formulaic and what have you. And if you're interested in land acknowledgement, I have a 20-page toolkit that has settler privilege, settler colonialism, identity. So it really kind of breaks it down, and it really defines and describes what it is. So you can go to my campus website, the California Indian Culture and Sovereignty Center, or the American Indian Studies Department, and download the toolkit, send it to anyone, because I want to give people a full education of what it means to give a land acknowledgement. And not
to interrupt you, but that's Cal State San Marcos, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So go to her page, find this document on acknowledging.
It's right on the front page of both of them, and I can put it in the chat in just a minute.
Yes, great. Okay, go ahead.
I was being so frustrated at the formulaic, and in there I talk about, unless your ancestors were brought here in chains, you are benefiting from structural systematic racism, and so you cannot just give a land acknowledgement and we're good. And even say things like, I want to recognize that I'm on stolen land. And the next thing is, and what are you doing about it, right? I've been on panels, I've been an audience member to panels in the last month of allyship. And it's about white women allyship. I'm going to scream if I have to sit through another one of those things, really. And my first one came 3 days after we were told Biden had the election, and we know who gave him that election. It was Black women, it was American Indian women, it was Latino women, right? And so to hear people talk about their privilege and their vulnerability, and no, absolutely not. And, and I said, stop doing land acknowledgements if you're going to treat Native women badly, if you're going to marginalize Black women, if you are going to ignore Latino women, if you are going to not defend Asian women as they're being assaulted over this virus, if we're going to talk about race in a binary way, and then just say, hey, Jolie, can you do a land acknowledgement? No, I'm not your performative animal. Absolutely not. So I'm a big proponent in doing land acknowledgements, but creating partnership. And so I wrote a piece of legislation, AB 1968, that died in appropriations this summer. We have one California Indian, first California Indian ever elected to the state legislature. He was elected first one in 168 years. And he just won a second term, James Ramos from the San Bernardino area. He's from the San Manuel tribe. So he carried the legislation. It was the land acknowledgement bill, and it would have encouraged, not required, not mandated, encouraged schools, parks, and museums, places of learning, places where your heart and your mind is open, to do land acknowledgements, to put a plaque, to change your website, whatever it is that you want to do, but so that students can know. And my big dream is that when kids in this country do the Pledge of Allegiance, that they also do a land acknowledgement, because then those children will recognize whose land that they are responsible for maintaining. That bill died in appropriations. It costs nothing. It costs nothing, my sisters. It costs nothing. But
How do we get it to somebody's, how do we get it back into somebody's face?
So here's what I need. Here's what we need. Within the same period of time, Shirley Weber passed a reparations bill in California. Let's get Shirley Weber and James Ramos, the Black and the Red community, to work together about reparations, about settler colonialism, about land claims. Let's work together, right? So that if Shirley could do that, right, in this climate, then I think her partnering with, how can the governor do a Truth and Reconciliation Committee and you can't even do a land acknowledgement in schools, parks, and museums in the state of California? Come on now. So that's where the power comes, right? We got to educate ourselves, and we got to go beyond the words, beyond the statement, because otherwise it's just performative. It's just to make people feel good. And also, you know, if you read my toolkit, to me, it's about reciprocity, about relationships, it's about respect. So you have to get with the community member and find out whose land is it. You know, it takes some work, but then you provide a seat at the table, right? You create a relationship. It's reciprocal. It's not like, oh, let me just do this land acknowledgement.
Well, see, for me, that's part of this problem where people in power pretend they can only focus on one thing. It's like, what's the problem in, if you can do one thing, you can certainly expand your attention span and acknowledge and get active toward many, I guess they're bills that need to become laws or what have you. So yeah, we need to look into that, because that's ridiculous. I'm tired of that excuse that you can only focus on one issue at a time. It's ridiculous. Cheryl, go ahead.
Yeah, so the original question was about identity, so I let everybody else go, because I'm just because I'm just black folded into more black. Like, I'm just black folded into more black. So, but I will say,
Sorry.
Yeah, interesting. This actually ties into one of the questions that I'm about to answer, which is, wouldn't it be nice, basically us working together? We do. Just because a Hollywood Reporter doesn't say that, you know, Women of Color Unite and Native Media Strategies run by Dr. Jolie Proudfit are rolling together. Trust me, we roll together. Right? Like, Jolie knows that I tag Jolie in stuff. She and I call each other. We get each other on panels, because I always say this: I know I come from stolen people, but I also know I live on stolen land. Right? And so for those people are like, trust me, just because the media, and that's just it, remember that whiteness thing, the anti-blackness thing, because even when Sharon is hosting this and we're all working together and all of that, it's not like the media is like, hey, look at all these dope women of color working together. How would that would piss everybody off, especially those white women Jolie is talking about. Yeah, I had to say it. And part of it has to, and look, when I was actually hit up by a friend of mine working in a well-known production company, and they're like, hey, Cheryl, and it was a black woman. She said, I need an Indigenous writer. She's like, I could go to the JTC list, but I need it right now. And I was like, I know who to hook you up with. And I hooked Jolie up with it. A win for Jolie, regardless of her or her writer, if they belong to Women of Color Unite, is a win for all women of color, right? That's the other thing. Don't let them put you in a barrel, because that barrel's a motherfucking lie. A win for Jolie is a win for me, right? And so that's the thing I really want people to understand in all of this, is that the young woman was right. I'm on my phone and I'm 54, so I got looking real close for your name. So I'm sorry, sweetie. I'm like, I can't see this name for shit. But you
looking for a name? Okay.
Yeah, but what she was saying about all of us coming together, here's the thing. Just because the media doesn't say it, just because we don't get the press for it, just because of all of that does not mean that it is not happening. We are, somebody so sweet, you don't look a day over 30, you lie so good. But really, there's narrative that doesn't fit mainstream media, right? And I think that's understand that we are doing this. I met Jolie a year ago because Sharon was on that committee that chose Tantu to be honored. Tantu Card, we honored all these women who came before us, Black, Asian, Latinx, Indigenous, who came before us. Tantu Cardinal was one of them. Tantu brought Jolie. Jolie and I were like, yeah, we were like sisters from another mother. Like, that was all she wrote, right? And because both of us, we curse a lot and we yell and we talk a lot. Yes, y'all can tell. But I mean that. And it was like, I met my other when it comes to this, because Jolie is right when she's like, I wish there wasn't some Native person who's just going to take the money. As a Black woman, I wish, like, I wish that every D&I program, that nobody ever took them, that nobody said, we're going to be 5,000 people jumping around, jumping through hoops, doing trauma essays for 20 motherfucking spots, and take that pat on the head, right? Those are the kind of things that, when we talk about banding together, because really it's performative. It's performative as fuck. Right? And it breaks my heart to watch the damage that is done to women of color to jump through all these hoops, especially in Hollywood. Like, it breaks my heart when I'm reading about them, whether it's Facebook or our private app on Mighty Network, about, I didn't make this program, and I didn't make this program, and I didn't make this program. Well, as somebody who tries to sit on scholarship boards in my free time and judge film festivals in my free time, that's because if you're a woman of color, I'm gonna give you a 10. I don't care if your movie sucks to a certain extent, because white guys' movies have always sucked.
Okay. Failing up.
Woo! They fail the fuck up. And I won't, the very first, I just want to say this, the very first item in the matrix of white supremacy and white power, I do not call it privilege, because it's a privilege to be raised by a woman of color. That's a privilege. Having a Black mama, that was my privilege, but I digress. So the very first thing in white supremacy and white power is perfectionism. And the more marginalized you are, the more people expect you to be perfect. Here's the thing. I don't expect women of color to be perfect. Let us be messy. When I look at content for young Black girls, we're either the hoe or we're like super like godlike. No, can't we just be messy? Can't we just be messy like all teenage girls are messy? right? And so this idea of perfectionism, that's why we create a hashtag, Start With Ain't Hollywood. All we do is match people. I don't ask you to write any trauma porn. Woe is me, poor little Black person, or poor little Indigenous person. I came from this race. Please pick me. This is my god awful. Like, no. We need to stop making marginalized people, especially women of color. And there is a very specific reason we call it BIPOC, because that Black and Indigenous are actually really separate from the identity of Latinx and Asian, right? I'm not saying that they haven't had I'm not, especially in the state of California. We got kids locked in cages. I got Asian members who are crying because they're being spit on in restaurants. So I'm not saying that, but I am saying that there is something very unique about the B and the I, right? And we need to acknowledge that. We need to know how the two worked hand in hand for the betterment of this nation, that then pretty much shit all over them. So there's that.
Yes. So before we go to Q&A, Allison's going to read some questions. Tanis, did you want to weigh in on any of that?
I'm good.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So I saw one question. Allison, I'm going to unmute you and uncamera you. If you can turn your camera on, Allison. But one question was about your toolkit, Jolie. So if you can put that link in the chat, that would be great. So
it's in there. I put it in there. It's in there.
Okay, great. It's in there. All right. So the person who asked that question about the toolkit, Jolie did put the link in the chat. Okay, so a question.
Can I add something that it's interesting because it's happening
yes.
in real time right now. This ABC TV series Big Sky,
mm-hmm.
which is starting to feel the heat and pressure from Native tribal leaders, from Native women, from Native organizations, because the whole show's narrative is basically about missing and murdered women. It just happens to be white women. And this whole notion of diversity and equity and inclusion continues to skip over the very people that need need to be brought in and front and center. And so, something like missing and murdered Indigenous women, which is epidemic proportions in some places and spaces like the state of Montana. And to name a film Big Sky, place it in Montana, and have the two female leads be a white woman and a black woman. A black woman in Montana. And these, they look like supermodels, both of them, of course, right? Because it's whose narrative is this? Whose lens is this? Is some white man's, David E. Kelly, lens on this. And so to take the Native oppression of missing and murdered Indigenous women out of the place that where it's in epidemic proportions to a population that it's happening to, and then to cast this entire series, and then to use the umbrella of diversity and inclusion. They even have a trans character in there, but they don't have a Native person. So talk about the dehumanization and erasure. Like, I am so mad about that, and it's so hurtful. And I hope you all, lift your voices up on this, because this is a really good example. And even in these narratives, they'll have these little, of this particular show, little conversations of, white power and kind of a nod to what's happening in contemporary politics, right? So they think they're being like progressive and liberal, but the elephant in the room is they completely erased Native women, and they've hijacked this oppressive, painful, murderous thing that is happening, and they took that. It's like, you take the land, you take our identity, now you take our trauma, and you're making it your own story. That is some shit, you guys. I mean, like, wow, we all need to lift our voices about that, because I think that is something where we can come together and say enough. And I think where we all can lift our voices too and put pressure on is Congresswoman Deb Haaland should be the next Secretary of the Interior. She should be. She should be. And with the same fervor and movement that we have made to make sure that Kamala Harris is in the position that she is in, we need to make sure Deb Haaland is the next Secretary of the Interior. We need to collectively work together and show our solidarity and lift her up, because when we lift her up, we lift ourselves up.
So, you know, that's another tactic. It's like, let's put one minority in there and they won't complain about the other group that is being oppressed being totally absent. It's like, no, we can see through that. We can say, yeah, that's cool, but how you gonna leave out Native American women? It makes no sense. Right. So that's
like with the election. It was kind of like with the election when and look, even LaGuardia did a great apology. Like she knows she fucked up. But I think it was you, Jolie, because people were like, oh, didn't she do a great apology? I'm like, she still left out Indigenous women. And people were actually like, I got people like DMing me going, can't we have anything as Black women and so forth and so on. I'm like, wait, I never said. Look at this, is black as they come, but we have to acknowledge that Arizona and Nevada were delivered to us by Indigenous women.
Yes.
It was delivered to us by Indigenous women. Nothing against Latinx. They voted just fine, but they did not. We're talking about who delivered Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. 3 of them were delivered by Black women. 2 of them were delivered by Indigenous women. I'm not erasing what anybody else did, right? But I also don't think, I even have on t-shirt. I forgot I was wearing this today. I'm just going to go work out in tomorrow. Black women lead. But the fact is, like, cool, okay. It takes nothing away from the brilliance of Stacey Abrams.
Right.
To talk about Indigenous women who delivered Arizona and Nevada.
Right.
I've seen the statistics.
Right.
One Black,
89%,
one Latinx.
89% of the vote. Yeah.
Right. It wasn't Black, it wasn't Latinx. And we're also talking about who were the people on the ground doing the work, right? Who were those people? They were Indigenous women. So, I just don't see how it doesn't take anything away from the Black female organizers in Michigan and Pennsylvania and Georgia to acknowledge the Indigenous women who delivered Arizona and Nevada.
Right. That's part of that internalized racism, internalized oppression we're talking about. But somebody had posted a graphic of Arizona, all of the areas with clusters of Native population, and the same state, Arizona, all the Democratic voting. And you could literally lay them right on top of each other, which is, the visual person's statistics to say, oh, yeah, he won Arizona. Cindy McCain may have gotten a few rich white people to vote for him, but the majority of that was Native American people. It's like 89% of the vote was because of Native American advocacy. So yeah, I think it's part of that internalized oppression that many of you were mentioning. And it's ridiculous. It's like the scarcity, we can't acknowledge one without being called out as a, sellout, or, why aren't you standing for your people? It's like, come on, people. Yeah. So I agree. Any question, Allison?
Yes, we have one question from Jasmine M. Living in a world that is still largely monoracial identifying place, what are the best ways of publicly asserting one's multiracial ethnic identity, especially as Black and Native?
I just think you should speak your truth. I think it's important. Navajo people do this a lot, and Ahsaki, when you all identify yourselves through your clans and on both sides, and that's a real beautiful thing. And so like on my websites and stuff, I have all my grandmother's lines. So because my identity is more than I belong to this tribe, right? It's about who are your people. And sometimes people don't know who their people are, and we have to make place for them, a safe place for them so they can find their people. But I think it's just being honest about who you are and your own positionality of your upbringing in your world and your placement. One of the things that really offends me a lot, and it happens a lot, especially in the university environment, because we have a lot of ethnic fraud. And I know this summer, some of those white ladies, they got called out for being Black. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have that all the time. Like, most American Indian Studies departments are run by like ethnic fraud people.
Wow.
But, right? Like, have you ever seen that Rachel Dolezal documentary? That stuff will blow your mind. That, I mean,
I can't.
but it's like bizarre, right? It's there's something wrong there. But the ethnic fraud thing. So when I meet people in the academy, and they find out who I am and what I do, they go, oh, I'm Indian too. And I said, oh, really? What tribe? And they're like, I don't know. And I said, oh, okay. But the point was to do what? I'm Indian too in competition, find community. Because as a Native person, when we meet other Native people, the minute we hear where you're from, we're like, okay, so who are your people? Like, we want to find connection. We're looking for community. And I've been in a pub in Ireland with my white husband, and a couple girls walk in the bar, and I'm like, oh, those girls are skins. That's a term nobody else could use but natives. I'm like, oh, those are skins. And he's just like, stop, and sure enough, they're Native women from Canada. And who do we have in common? Georgina Lightning. So we're like texting her from this pub in Canada. And, it's just like, cause we like, we kind of like circle it and we're like, we're trying to find community. And I'm in Ireland in a pub, you know what I'm saying? But we're looking for community. You know how many times I've been sent to the dean's office, literally for like, this person said you were questioning their racial identity. No, I asked what kind of Sioux they were. That's all I did. You know what I'm saying? And what those ethnic fraudsters are doing is taking a position and a job from somebody else that could be helping me, could be supporting our students, supporting our community. And so the more we find space and place for us to identify in our truth and recognize who we are and put it out there, I think it makes the fraudsters run crazy and run away, and they won't do this anymore because they can't stand in their truth. Right? We just stand in our truth. Some of us are born and raised on the res, some of us are not, some of us are mixed race, some of us are not, but it's just, Shonda, we have to have like an off conversation, talk about the Black Indian, white Indian thing. Because I'm like, isn't that something that those folks don't go around calling themselves white Indians? It's just,
they didn't have to. They didn't have to. In Virginia, I lived in Virginia for 13 years. I danced powwow, women's traditional dancer. And a couple of times they would card the darker skinned dancers, but they wouldn't card the white looking Indians. And, literally the Chickahominy, when I danced during an intertribal, the first time they said, hey, do you have your card? Don't dance. And I was like, well, I sing on drums here. Okay, sure, I won't dance. But when they called intertribal, I went back out to dance with a Cheyenne sister, a Seminole brother. And when I came out of that powwow, these 3 chiefs confronted me, the Atkins. Anyway, but they didn't confront any of the other white Indians. They didn't tell any of the other white that I saw, do you have your card? You can't dance. And I saw some white jingle dress dancers out there, and they get more accepted. They are less ostracized, discriminated against. Even one of the chiefs said, well, we're concerned that you're a hobbyist. And I'm like, you look like my family, like my cousins, does my regalia offend you? Is it wrong? Teach me, educate me. One, it should have been women and not men, but that's a whole nother story. So yes, that Black versus white, Indian, and the fact that I actually have to say I am African American, Afro-Indigenous, African, Black Indian is it's a choice for me to say that, right? And I have had some of my full-blood relatives say to me, well, why do you call yourself Black Indian? Why don't you just be Indian? And then I've had Black people say, why do you call yourself Indian? Why don't you just be Black, because you look like us. And so I made that conscious choice to say, I'm both, and I represent all my nations, all my relatives to the best of my ability. And I'm not gonna let anyone take that from me. And again, a part of that, educating people that this is a struggle that the darker skinned person in this country has to do at every juncture of their life, of the historical intersection, of any historical trauma in this country. All of the intersections, the Buffalo Soldiers, although that's contentious as well, the 5 civilized tribes owning slaves, and then the Cherokee, and the some of them disenrolling the freedmen. And I mean, there are so many moments where that colonization attitude, that the racism, just the oppressive racist attitude continually comes back to confront us, in a public and a private way. So I did make the choice to call myself Black Indian, no matter where I am. So yeah, it is a rampant, rampant issue in our culture.
So we're going a little over. So I'm going to ask each of you to end. If you can just briefly say, what do you think is the most pressing issue that we separately or collectively are confronting right now, and what is one of your perhaps best suggestions to address that?
I'll go first. I think the big issue, the macro issue, is the environment. I think Mother Earth needs our help. And I think the sooner we look at this kind of settler colonial mentality, I think the sooner we can address the issues of what's happening to our water, to our natural resources, to our planet, because that's something we all have in common. But that takes us addressing that settler privilege and that settler colonial mentality. And it's a mentality that unfortunately even Indigenous people can take on. And when we put a dollar in position and power over, and not even just human beings, right? But just over health and wellness, over harmony. So I would like to see us collectively address what's happening to our planet. We talk about Mother Earth as a female. And since we're all women here, I think, recognizing that she is not a resource, but a relative.
I 100,000% agree with that. And then as you're talking, I'm thinking about healing, right? And how, like, if we don't heal Mother Earth, how can we heal ourselves? And so a part of this entire journey of being a human being is about trying to the best of our ability, walk with a sense of humility. Hopefully that deals with your mental, your physical, your spiritual health, your family's health. But how can we do any of that unless we are looking at the earth and the children, right? And then also, and not harming our children and not harming our women, and and just being as respectful and mindful of other people in our space. And so I think for me it is Mother Earth, but it's also about being being that honorable person to the best of your ability, to your children, to your women, to your loved ones. Indigenous women are the most murdered in our country. Black women are the most likely to die in a domestic dispute with their partners, right? Twice as likely to die in domestic dispute. So I think we really, as a collective voice, have to say, stop harming our women, stop harming our children.
Yeah, I would echo both of those sentiments. And I've been thinking about that in the way of offering more love, as general and vague as that might sound, but like love for everything, for the other, for the earth, for like just sitting and appreciating creation, just at the wonder of everything around you, and just trying to come from a place of love, really, when you're approaching anyone and anything, I think has such a powerful spillover. As cheesy as that might sound, I really think if we had, you know, the view of love for everything, we'd be in a much better place.
I like that. Ahsaki?
I would say to protect the culture, our language, especially on my Navajo reservation and other tribes, our language, our practices are becoming more of a thing that what it used to be, you know what I mean? We're kind of losing it. It's scary, especially I grew up very traditionally and my family's very traditional, and seeing other families that are not as traditional, but to really push, you know, protecting our language itself. We may not be able to speak it fluently, but try to preserve it as much as possible, because again, that is our strength. That's our channel to speak to our creator and Mother Earth and all the elements. So I'm really, really big about making sure we hang on tight to our language, because without that, you know, like for instance, for my tribe, the Navajo code talkers, you know, they played a very big role for our country. And that's, again, it's our language. That was the key. So, you know, whatever tribe you're from, you know, try to hold on to that, you know, as much as you can, and to be proud of who you are, of all cultures, you know, and do not let one culture outweigh the other. To learn how to balance it is hard, super hard, but it's possible. And be someone that's just gonna be kind to each other and support each other much as you can, because in the business world, like what I'm in, the industry is really cutthroat. It's really catty, and you know, unfortunately, you know, there's not that many beauty brands in the industry right now, Indigenous beauty brands, and I feel like more now than anything, we need to come together, and we need each and every one of you all to support not just my beauty brand, but all beauty brands. We're all playing a major part of representation in the industry that forgot us for so many years. And, you know, they're playing catch up of making sure they have, you know, Black models now for clout and for profit, but for those that are actually truly for the people, like I say, Nishitanapa, for the people, you know, truly be behind those companies. Doesn't matter if it's a beauty brand, clothing brand, any company that's really trying to do work for the people, because our economy, when we create our own economy and sustain it, we don't need the federal government. We don't need them, you know, we need each other more than anything. So keep the culture alive, work together, be proud of who you are, is really all I can say to those who are listening.
Cheryl?
Well, they all spoke about being Native and I'm not. So I'm going to leave Mother Earth to them, because I fucking hate nature. Like I'm too bougie. Like I'm allergic to everything. I hate nature. I do believe in science. I do believe in climate change. I do believe don't fuck with Mother Nature. Like leave nature alone. Okay? So even us people who don't like nature or be in it, we know like science is actually real. I'm just going to say this. I do what I do because I have hope. That's what I do, Every day, getting up, every day fighting all of the isms, sexism, racism, ageism, colorism, ableism, you know, homophobia, sizeism. It's because I have hope. Here's the other thing. In doing a lot of our programs, and I always felt that that's why I did what I did, because of anecdotal hope. But when we did the first round of #StartWith8Hollywood, we sent everybody forms afterwards. And that was what came through. And so statistically, what we were able to do is give all these women hope. And so that's what I do. That's why I partner with the people that I partner. I like to say I love everybody, but you know, sometimes I just gotta put my foot up. Somebody white say, I said, no, I don't love them. Like, I just don't. I'm not gonna pretend. They hold on too much to white power, which is too detrimental to the mental and emotional and physical and spiritual well-being of my members. That pisses me off. Yeah, I'm not gonna give you no love for that. Like, I ain't gonna give you love for that. But what I will do is throw down some statistics, look at you and go, now motherfucker, what you gonna do? That's the hope, right? And as far as Jolie knows me, obviously, Sharon, you know, Med, I see some of my members from Women of Color Unite. You know me. I'm just going to continue to hold people's feet to the fire and work with all the people who want to work with me. Here's the thing. Bill Duke taught me, when I was Bill Duke's producer, Bill Duke taught me a couple of really important lessons. And one was, don't play in a crowded field, go build your own. So everybody that we partner with, which is why we don't partner with everybody, because most people want to come in and they want to tell us what to do, right? Everybody thinks that they know better, especially more than Black and Indigenous. Like, everybody thinks that they're smarter than we are. Everybody. So the one thing that I always let them know is that this is our table. This is our house. They should be glad that they got a motherfucking invitation, because they can step up or step off. I'm not rolling with any more performative bullshit. I'm going to call you out. I'm going to call you all sorts of names when I call you out, right? And I'm going to roll with the people who know how to roll with me. I'm going to roll specifically with women of color, because the rest of the world may seem to treat us like we don't have a brain in our head. But I know that I'm looking at some of the smartest people I know. So that's what I do, hope.
So before I'm going to ask, if she won't mind, Jolie to give us a sending off of some sort. But before that, I want to take a screenshot. So if everybody can just look up and give me a smile, that would be great. Love it, love it. Before we sign out, I just want to thank everybody for coming, for logging in. I hope this has given everybody food for thought, inspiration for action, and all that good stuff. I want to do more of this sort of stuff because these conversations are important. A few weeks ago on Fox News, they were showing another Trump rally, and someone had a sign up that said, "We're coming for Blacks and Native Americans first. New world order." And so we know that that B and I in BIPOC is crucial, because they have told us that they want to come for us first, which means we can't sort of waste time in some of the states that you all have brought up about, you know, having to deal with people asking you to choose one or the other, or challenging your identification. We don't have time for that. It is time for us to keep doing the work that we do, keep inspiring people, and knowing, as you all have said, that there is power in our collective action. So with that being said, Dr. Jolie Proudfit will send us off with a blessing. Jolie.
Okay. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you to the women's hearts and minds and hands that made today happen, to bring us all together, to have this time and this place for us to open our hearts and our minds and our spirits to this conversation. And some of these topics can be very painful. And so I think, you know, however you pray in your way, or whatever materials you use, whether it's sweetgrass or sage, cedar, you know, take the time to smudge yourself and bless yourself. Take the time to bless your home and your family, especially now. Take the time to pray for the water to pray for the air, to pray for the animals, to pray for each other. Take the time to pray for those who want to harm us. Take the time to pray for those who want to help us, and pray that they have clarity in their walk, and clarity in their path, and clarity in their heart, and strength in their words, and strength in their minds, and strength in their bodies. And we look to our heavens, into our Milky Way, into Creator, to ask to bless us in all of our journeys, in all of our thoughts, in all of our corners. And we ask that Creator, clean our heart when it's not as pure as it should be. We ask that Creator clean our throats and our words when sometimes we're choked up and don't have the right words to say. We, ask Creator to bring us things in our life that instill the beauty in each other. Remember to always lift your hands up to each other, and to be kind to one another, especially now with this virus, which has shown us how fragile the human race is, but also that there are others that are dependent on us. You think about all those four-leggeds that have also lost their lives over this, and the minks, for example, who have been used on this planet for their beauty and their fur, and now are dying in mass graves because of this virus. And what can we do to help each other? And we just ask the Creator to send us off in a good way, and with good hearts, and with good words, and with good minds, and that we just always remember that love is medicine. And if we are going to continue to love each other, then we're going to continue to heal each other. Nashon Lovik, my heart is good. Thank you. Oh.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.